Alam, pagkanahin ko naman lang isang ano, para idikit na lang natin. Makikisabit na lang ako. Pagkanahin niya. I-test mo. Gumagana? Ipakinggan mo. Walang mahal.
Kasama po namin si Atty. Raul Lambino. Matagal na po kasi kami na-invite. Pero babalik po kami mamaya sa Kongreso pagtapos nito. So nakakommit na po kasi kami noong August pa. Kaya po hindi kami atin. Ano po ito, Asia Pacific Ensuring China Relation ng Pilipinas at China po. Yan. Kaya po babalikin mamaya sa Kongreso. Tapusin lang po namin to. So nandito si Atty. Raul Lambino. Si Texas, USA. Si Jillian Sangrila. Ano po ito, matagal na po kami na-invite dito ni Atty. Raul Lambino. Relationship po ng Pilipinas at China po to. Pagtapos po nito, diretso ulit kami sa Kongreso. Balik kami doon. Okay. At tapusin lang po namin ito. Hindi naman ito masyadong matagal. So samahan lang muna natin si Atty. Raul Lambino. Nandito na po si Atty. Raul dumating na. O, pabalik kami mamaya sa Kongreso. Dito lang tapusin muna namin. Hindi naman ito magtagal. So kung makikita nyo, karamihan ng mga Chinese. Kasi si Atty. Raul Lambino, siya po talaga yung kahit nung nasa panahon pa ni FVRRT, siya yung talaga nakikipag-dialogo sa mga about po sa Philippine-China relation po. Kung mapapasin nyo, lagi nasa China si Atty. Raul Lambino.
And Asia Pacific.
Silim yun. Silim.
Opo, subukan ko po, Jillian Warja, tapos sabihan na lang kita. Pag po nakaalis kami kasi minsan kasi po bigla kaming pinapatawag kagaya ngayon, di ba? Nandoon ako sa Batasan, tapos biglang pumunta kami dito. Wala nga po akong ayos, pero nakadress ako. Wala akong lipstick kasi nakalimutan ko po dalhin yung mga gamit ko. Pati yung mga pang-eyeliner ko. Nakapagdala lang po ako ng flat shoes, tsaka dress. Tapos wala rin po akong blazer, malamig. Kaya po talaga ganun po yung mga sitwasyon namin ngayon. Pero carry, basta nandyan kayo. After nito, sibat kami diretso ng Kongreso. Nasa Kongreso na rin po kami kanina. Nag-out lang po kami doon ng mga 11:30. Tapos balik kami doon mga 5. Kasi sa gabi naman pwede kami nandun. Nandito rin po yung mga SM na invited din po ni Atty. Raul Lambino.
Jimmy.
Malayo sa Tagigto.
2:47.
Nag-travel kami ng 1.5 hour.
1 minute lang.
Pero mamaya babalik kami doon.
Live feed.
Ito, SM na katabi ko.
Record lang. Hindi nga. Naka-live feed. Sa...
Mamaya po pagka nag-start na yung event, hindi na po ako mag-shoutout sa inyo kasi para marinig niyo yung sinasabi ng mga kaibigan natin, mga Chinese at saka yung mga Pilipino, Chinese at saka mga kapatid natin Pilipino kasi mag-i-space po sila. Sobrang bait po niya Tony Leon Lambino. Nagagalit po sila nung hindi kami aatin kaya po talagang pumunta kami. Pero pupunta po si Tony Lambino sa kongreso. Sinabihan po ako ng sekretary. Siguro pagtapos po rin dito ng event, makikijoin sila to. Sinabi sa akin ng sekretary. So ngayon po, nagkataon lang po talaga na sabay. Pero ito po event na to, siguro 1.5 month na po nasabihan kami. Kaya hindi siya complex sa Congress kasi nauna po to. So, pero hindi kami lahat ng vlogger nandito kasi yung iba hindi na doon na. Ang nandito lang po si Tinelvis, Sir Mike, Auntie niya, Aguilar at si Marley. Yung iba po yung naiwan sa Kongreso.
Ladies and gentlemen, the program is about to begin. May I request everyone to please sit down. Thank you. 女士们、先生们，活动即将开始，请大家就座，谢谢。Once again, may we request everyone to please take your seats as the program is about to begin.
Support po natin si Tony Lambino. Pupunta po sila sa Kongreso, sinabihan po ako. So dito muna tayo ngayon kahit mga 3 hours, tapos balik kami ng Kongreso.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen.
女士们、先生们，大家下午好。
We are about to start the 14th Manila Forum. The Manila Forum is a joint project of the Association of Philippines China Study and the Chinese Embassy here in Manila. And to start our program, let's have the singing of the national anthem of the Republic of the Philippines, followed by the singing of the national anthem of the People's Republic. Kindly stand.
请全体起立，奏唱非洲国歌。
Alam ng puso sa dibdib mo'y buhay, lupang bibig, luyang pinamagin, sarap ng watawan mo'y tagong na naglilinig, ang bituin at araw ng kailan kamay di magdidinig, lupa ng araw ng buwan, ating pagsinta, buhay langit sa piling mo. May mga api ang mamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
Thank you. You may be seated now.
请就座。
Before we are going to call on the speakers of today's program, please let me acknowledge some personalities who are here today. Later on, the speakers will be properly introduced. But I would like to thank the special envoy of the Office of the President of the People's Republic of China, Ambassador Benedict Chico is here with us. We'd also like to acknowledge the former President of the Federation of Philippine Central Council State and one of the keynotes of the Association of Philippine Standard Standing, being a member of the Board of Advisory of ACO, Ambassador Francisco. I see very familiar faces here from the academy, from the business sector, and from different organizations in the Philippines that I would not be able to mention their names one by one. So let's begin the program immediately by calling upon His Excellency, the Ambassador of the People's Republic of China, Wang Xilian, for his welcome remarks.
有请中国驻非大使黄喜林阁下致辞。
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, good afternoon to all of you. It is a true pleasure to hear with both new and old friends at the 14th Manila Forum for China-Philippine Relations. Thank you to our host, the Association for the Philippines-China Understanding, for the strong support, and a warm welcome to the delegation of Chinese scholars led by well-known Professor Victor Lau. The theme today, safeguarding peace and security in the Asia Pacific, captures our common aspiration to deepen mutual understanding and trust, promote win-win cooperation, advance the reform of global governance, and work hand in hand to uphold peace and stability in our part of the world. 12 years ago, President Xi Jinping, with a keen understanding of global trends and a deep concern for mankind's future, called for the building of a community with a shared future for humanity, lighting the way for a world in search of direction. Since then, China has put forward the Global Development Initiative, the Global Security Initiative, and the Global Civilization Initiative. Together, these three initiatives serve as pillars of the vision. They have contributed China's wisdom to tackling global challenges across multiple dimensions, while injecting much needed stability and positive energy into a world facing challenges and greater uncertainties. Not long ago, China successfully hosted the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit in Tianjin, as well as the commemoration of the 80th anniversary of the victory in the Chinese people's resistance against Japanese aggression and the world anti-fascist war. These events convey a clear message of China's steadfast commitment to upholding international fairness and justice, and underscored the strong momentum towards building a community with a shared future for the mankind. Building on the three major initiatives, President Xi recently further proposed the Global Governance Initiative, for short GGI, offering a practical roadmap for reforming and improving global governance and providing stronger support for our shared future. The GGI rests on 5 core principles, that is, upholding sovereign equality, abiding by international law, practicing multilateralism, embracing a people-centered approach, and focusing on concrete action. This initiative aligns with the purposes and principles of the UN Charter, responds to the common aspirations of people in all countries, and addresses pressing needs of today's world. Since its launch, the GGI has been welcomed and supported by leaders of many countries and international organizations, and it is destined to gain broader support and recognition from the international community. This initiative is a natural response to the trends of our time. Today, the world is undergoing profound and accelerated changes unseen in a century. Emerging markets and developing countries are rising together, bringing about a historic shift in the international balance of power. This has created strong impetus for reforming the global governance system. At the same time, the calls of the Global South for peace, development, and cooperation are growing louder, while the urgency to improve the global governance and redress historical injustices continues to mount. Born in this context, the GGI responds to the challenges of our times and charts a course for transformation. The initiative is a right choice for addressing our common challenges. Around the world, hegemonic and bullying practices, using strength to intimidate the weak, seizing benefits through force or deceit, and playing zero-sum games, are causing a serious harm. The deficits in peace, development, security, and governance continue to widen, posing unprecedented challenges to humanity. No country can remain unaffected. Only through cooperation can we strengthen our collective resilience against external risks and pursue shared development. The 5 core principles of the GGI are deeply rooted in China's 5 traditional culture and carry forward the best traditions of its diplomacy. They reject the outdated logic of zero-sum games and winner takes all, and rise above Western centrism and notions of civilizational or racial superiority. At the same time, they add new dimensions to China's traditional worldview and to Marxist theories of world history, offering fresh, values-based guidance for global governance. In a world marked by turbulence and transformation, peace and stability in the Asia-Pacific are especially precious. It is our shared responsibility to preserve and safeguard this situation. As a member of the Asia-Pacific region, China has long shared a common destiny with its neighbors, remains committed to promoting regional peace and stability, as well as building a community with a shared future for the mankind. With a shared future along with neighboring countries. Looking ahead, China will continue to work hand in hand with regional partners to champion the Asian values of peace, cooperation, openness, and inclusiveness, resolutely upholding international fairness and justice, and serving as a source of stability in a turbulent world. Taking this opportunity, I would like to share a few ideas in the hope of inspiring further reflection and dialogue. First, with evolving theories of international order, we now see two contrasting schools of thoughts. One grounded in international law, and another one based on so-called rules. To be specific, so-called rules-based order and international law-based order. The latter raises important questions on exactly what and whose rules is this rules-based order founded? How do these rules relate to the established framework of international law? And ultimately, what kind of international order does the world at large and our region in particular truly need? Second, as Ukraine and other crises continue to spill over, some countries have sought to replicate bloc confrontation in the Asia-Pacific by promoting the idea of an Asia-Pacific NATO. Faced with such divisive intentions, we must ask, what sort of security architecture does our region require? One that is exclusive, built only on military alliances, or one that is distinctly Asian, featuring shared security, respect for diversity, and active dialogue. Today, we are happy to welcome distinguished scholars from both China and the Philippines. We look forward to meaningful exchanges and that will generate fresh insights and help build greater consensus. In closing, I sincerely wish this event every success. Thank you, and mabuhay.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Huang. 非常感谢黄庆元大使的致辞。
Before we introduce our keynote speakers and other speakers, let me have this opportunity to introduce the able men and women of the Association for Philippines-China Understanding. And please stand up if I call your name. We have here APCO President Sisto Dindito. We also have here the other members of the Board of Trustees. I call first with retired Police Colonel Joron Cespantes, who's speaking today. We also have here retired Police General Fernando Paz, the Treasurer of KTC. We have two of the most prestigious media personalities here. Trustee Adolfo Panginawan and Trustee Herman Chutalran, and one of our lady trustees here, Madam Mavi Chai, and one of the youngest successful businessmen from Florida, Luzon, Mr. Fernando Chong. So they are the men and women behind APCO.
欢迎各位非中了解协会的领导，欢迎你们。
Let me now introduce for today's forum. We have assembled a remarkable cast of academicians, experts, and scholars on regional and international issues to lead the discussion and exploration of the topic at hand. Ensuring continuing peace and security in the Asia-Pacific region.
今天论坛的主题是守护亚太地区和平与安全。那么今天我们非常荣幸地迎来了很多知名的专家来为我们讲话。
Let me introduce first our guests, 3 panelists from abroad who come from prestigious institutions. First is Professor Victor Gao. He is a lawyer. Now he's a professor of Suzhou University, Vice President of the Center for China and Globalization, and Chairman of the China Energy Security Institute. He has held senior roles in diplomacy, law, investment banking, and corporate leadership, including Morgan Stanley, CICC, and CNOOC. With decades of experience in global finance and energy, Professor Gao has advised major institutions worldwide. He holds advanced degrees from Yale University and Beijing, and is a licensed lawyer in New York. Professor Victor.
今天第1位的特邀嘉宾是高志凯教授，他是现任苏州大学的特聘教授，是全球化智库的副主任，同时担任中国能源安全研究院的院长。他曾在外交、法律、投资银行、企业管理等多个领域任职，并积累丰富的经验，包括摩根士丹利、CICC 等机构以及中海油等大型企业的高管职务。他在耶鲁法学院取得法学博士学位，在北京外国语大学获得硕士学位，曾在美国纽约取得律师执业的资格。
Please welcome with a round of applause our first keynote speaker, Professor Victor.
掌声有请主旨演讲嘉宾高志凯先生。
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. This is truly my greatest honor to be here, and let me give my respect to His Excellency Ambassador Wong from China, and so many other excellencies, and so many other distinguished guests, not only from the Philippines, but also from China, from many other countries. Yes, I did go to Yale, and I got a JD degree from Yale Law School. And I was thinking, going to Yale actually is one of the reasons why I'm so fascinated with the Philippines. Let me tell you why. Because the first governor of the Philippines after 1898 was Mr. Taft. He was from Yale, and he was the first governor of the United States in the Philippines. And he actually laid the foundation for how Philippines developed into a modern society. He played a crucial role in charting out all the rules and the regulations, which eventually became the fabric of the Philippines. Later, of course, you may know that Mr. Taft not only became a Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States, he also became a President of the United States. And he is the first President of the United States with education from Yale. So in that sense, whenever I looked at the Philippines, I thought about Mr. Taft, the first US governor of the United States in the Philippines. We all together have 5 presidents of the United States with educational background from Yale, including President Ford in the 1970s, President George H.W. Bush, and President Clinton, of course, and President Bush the Jr. Now you may know the Vice President of the United States, J.D. Vance, was also from Yale Law School. I was class of 1993, he was class of 2013, I was 20 years ahead of J.D. Vance. And if things go right, J.D. Vance actually may or may not, you never know, be the next president of the United States. Therefore, from my perspective, from China, being a Chinese, lots of experience in the United States, being licensed as a lawyer in the state of New York, and with Mr. Taft being my alumna and the first governor of the Philippines, it truly gives me very extraordinary perspective when I look at the Philippines. And I consider everyone here in this very distinguished audience as my friends. And allow me to mention one point before I start my presentation. I truly believe China and the Philippines for thousands of years, we got along with each other very well, without war, without conflict, without confrontation. And let me share with you what my firm belief. I believe for many thousands of years to come in the future, I'm convinced China and the Philippines will remain close neighbors and very good friends. Now, we are living in the present. At present, there are some ups and downs in our bilateral relations, of course. We need to deal with these tensions, which, if left unattended, may actually flare up into major crisis, which will not be good for China or for the Philippines. But I truly believe, being the two very close neighbors just across a body of water, it gives all the incentives to the Chinese people and the Filipino people to deal with each other as equal and to be very constructive in our relations with each other. Allow me to start my presentation. I first came to the Philippines back in 1993 when I was a lawyer in the Wall Street, working for a distinguished American law firm. Now, I came here to work on the convertible bond issue by Robinson's department store. I worked as a lawyer, later I worked as a banker with Morgan Stanley, and we had very good business in the Philippines. Now, back in 1993 and 1994, let me tell you the real truth. The Philippines, or at least Manila, which I visited at that time, was much more advanced and much more developed than most of China. At that time, the Philippines was considered one of the most developed countries in this part of Asia, one of the leading nations in the ASEAN framework, whatever it was called at that time, and a country with great expectation and with great aspirations. And at that time, if I remember correctly, China was very poor, very not developed. But if we fast forward to today, 2025, China is already the largest economy. If we use purchasing power parity, China is about 135% that of the United States. In terms of the official exchange rate, China is next only to the United States. My belief is that in another 5 to 10 years, the size of the Chinese economy, if we still use official exchange rate, will be larger than the United States. And if you believe in Elon Musk, he keeps saying by the middle of this century, China will be about twice the size of the US economy. So we are living in a fast changing world. We can compare China and the Philippines back in 1993, 1995. We can compare China and the Philippines today. We can compare China versus the United States today in terms of purchasing power parity or official exchange rate. Or we can also look forward into the future. Let's say by 2050. Just imagine for the Filipinos. You always have very strong relations with the United States for whatever reason, ever since 1898. And then the United States by 2050 will remain one of the most important and consequential countries in the world. But then, just across a body of water, you have China as one of your biggest neighboring countries, twice as big as the United States in terms of the size of the economy. So, my idea and my contribution to my friends in the Philippines is to be friendly with the United States and be friendly with China. It will be suicidal if you want to be friends with one and an enemy with the other, because that's not going to help the fundamental interest of the Philippines. Be friends with both China and the United States probably will be the best strategy for the Philippines. Now, another point I want to share with you. I traveled to more than 100 countries in the world. And I truly believe Philippines is one of the countries which has all the natural endowments and the geographical location which will make the people in the Philippines one of the wealthiest nations in the world. Look at the country, look at your geopolitical position, look at the fact that you are just a body of water away from China, a body of water a little bit further from Japan, and across the Pacific Ocean from the United States. You should be in the hub of everything going from east to west, from north to south. What is missing, according to my observation, is what China has been doing ever since 1978. Let me share with you. Just now, one of you mentioned I worked for Deng Xiaoping as his interpreter. Yes, I worked for Deng Xiaoping for more than 20 of his very important meetings with foreign visiting dignitaries. Now, Deng Xiaoping told us to focus only on several things. One is to maintain domestic stability at any cost. If you do not have domestic stability, you cannot develop. And look at the Philippines, you need to maintain your domestic stability, of course. And the second point, equally, if not more importantly, keeping peace in the world. It doesn't mean that China can dictate peace to many countries in the world, but it means that China wants to avoid getting involved in any war with anyone in the world. Because without peace, you cannot have domestic stability. And without peace and without stability, you cannot get your economic development. Then the third point is even more important. Let me share with you this open secret. Deng Xiaoping always said, development is the hard truth. Now, we believe in development since 1978 as the hard truth which guides everything we do. Forget about pure politics. Forget about geopolitics, for example. Forget about many other things. Just keep focused on development. When I travel in the Philippines, I always remind myself, if I have a chance to tell my Filipino friends, and if I can only say one thing, that is, development is the hard truth. If you do not develop, no one will wait for you. You will be left behind. Just look at other ASEAN member states. Laos has built railway connection. Indonesia has built fast rail tracks linking from Bandung to Jakarta, and they are expanding that to the east and to the west. Look at Thailand, they are building railway connections. Look at Vietnam, they are connecting their northern border with China all the way to Cambodia. Look at so many other countries. They are building, they are connecting, they are building up their connectivity. And if we look at the Philippines, one thing which really pains me is that Filipino people deserve to develop and deserve to treat development as the hard truth, as we do. We in China even today still believe development is the hard truth. Of course, back 46 years ago, we talked about modernization of our agriculture, industry, national defense, and science and technology. Now, back in China, we talk about tongue twister. We call it new qualitative productivity, meaning everything using science and technological breakthrough need to guide whatever we do as an economy. And in this regard, let me share with you, AI becomes more and more important. Now, you know that in January, out of Hangzhou in China, there was a major breakthrough. It's called the DeepSeek. I published an op-ed after the DeepSeek event. I mentioned 2 points. Allow me to share with you. One is that AI does not mean American intelligence. Really, I really mean it. It's not rocket science. AI does not mean American intelligence. AI means artificial intelligence for the benefit of all, developed by all, and participated by all countries involved. But if any one country wants to build up AI dominance, do you know what will be the consequence? No one should allow any country to build up AI dominance. And I always tell my friends in the United States, including many from Yale University or from Yale Law School, don't build up American AI dominance as if AI is American intelligence. Because if any one country achieves dominance in AI, holy cow, it will dominate the world. It will destroy this polarity in the world of today. You may say, polarity in the world? No, there is one country which has unipolarity in the world. But you are wrong, you are absolutely wrong. Because this year, we are celebrating the 80th year anniversary of the founding of the United Nations back in 1945. Do you know the world order established back in 1945 after the unconditional surrender of Nazi Germany and the unconditional surrender of Japanese fascism was actually multipolar in its nature. Just look at the United Nations Security Council with 5 permanent member states: China, the United States, former Soviet Union, now Russia, United Kingdom, and France, each with a veto power. Meaning, these 5 permanent member states check and balance each other, preventing any one country from achieving dominance. Why? Do you know why? You need to ask why. Because the rule of thumb is that if any one single country achieves dominance of the world, it may enslave all the other countries. It may hold a gun at your head. It may issue ultimatum to you. It may force you to kowtow, kneel down. It may actually go back to the rule of the jungle rather than rule of civilization. So we are living in a fast-changing world. I believe this so-called reciprocal tariff war demonstrates that no country should be allowed to achieve dominance of the world. Now, ever since April the 2nd, I've been interviewed on multiple occasions, and I've declared in my own humble capacity that the tariff war launched by the United States is the wrong war, and the United States government is holding a gun at everyone's head. For example, I proclaim that this is the wrong war. For so many countries, basically, could not resist the maximum pressure from the United States until one appeals court in the United States, through its ruling, declared most of the elements of the global reciprocal tariff war launched by the United States are illegal and even unconstitutional in the United States. Of course, that forces the Trump administration to rush the case to the Supreme Court of the United States, and the United States has decided to do an urgent review of the situation. They've scheduled sometime in October next month to review this very, very extraordinary case, whereby the appeals court in the United States ruled against the government of the United States, declaring the tariff war as illegal and unconstitutional. So I think we need to wait until the final ruling of the Supreme Court of the United States. And whatever decision of the Supreme Court, I think we all need to do the right thing. That is to protect free trade. I hope China will protect free trade. The Philippines will also protect free trade. All the ASEAN 10 countries will protect free trade, because free trade deserves to be protected. Without free trade, and free trade includes free trade in goods as well as free trade in services, the Philippines earns a lot of income through free trade in services. So in that sense, we are all in the same boat. We all need to rise up and defend free trade, either free trade in goods or free trade in services. Now, we are also living in a world in the sense that we are at a threshold of peace versus war. Now you see so many wars in Ukraine, between Russia and Ukraine, and whoever that is behind Ukraine, sometimes you say, well, the United States was behind the Ukraine. And now President Trump said, if I were president of the United States back in 2022, the war would never have happened. And President Putin in Alaska on August the 18th also declared that if His Excellency President Trump were the president of the United States in 2022, the war in Ukraine would never happen. So what exactly is the problem with the war in Ukraine? The war in Gaza. So many people killed. More than 70 million innocent people, civilians, were killed. 3/4 of them, men and women, women and children, for example. It's horrific. And we have other wars against Iran, and amazingly, war between India and Pakistan, for example, involving one of the largest scale aerial battle, probably since Vietnam War. And in the middle of all this, Ambassador Wang from China also mentioned just now, on September the 2nd, there was a big celebration in Beijing, attended by about 27 heads of state and heads of government from so many other countries, and many other deputy prime minister, ministers of all kinds, foreign ministers from more than 180 countries in the world were all gathered in Tiananmen Square to celebrate what? Two things. One was the 80th year anniversary of the victory of the Chinese people's war of resistance against Japanese aggression. And the second was the 80th anniversary of world's anti-fascism war. Both ended in August and September 1945. So, we are living in the world today, and the world order we are living in was not established today, was not established yesterday. It was not established after the end of the Cold War in 1991. It was, allow me to mention, established back in 1945, when Japanese fascism was defeated, when Nazi Germany was defeated. Now, in this context, allow me to mention one point. China made the greatest sacrifice, and we did most of the heavy lifting to defeat fascism. Why? Because for the United States, the war against Japan was less than 4 years. For China, the war of resistance against Japanese aggression started in 1931 and it lasted 14 years. At the height of the Japanese occupation, Japan occupied about half of the Chinese landmass, and they closed off almost all the Chinese coastline. Japan wanted to defeat China. Japan wanted to wipe out the Chinese culture, wipe out the Chinese civilization. They claimed that the Japanese nation was the finest example of the civilization in our part of the world. This actually forced everyone in China to rise up to commit to defeating the Japanese oppressors. Let me share with you, the Second World War was not a second European war. I was shocked to hear some European leaders pretending that they are shocked that China made a lot of contribution to defeating fascism. Let me tell that lady in Brussels, don't be shocked. Without China fighting against Japanese aggression for 14 years in a row, sacrificing more than 35 million people, my nationals, the Chinese nationals, let me tell you, Japan and Nazi Germany, they actually pool their resources and attack Soviet Union and really establish their gridlock on the Eurasian continent. And if Japan completely defeated China, or if China really surrendered as, pardon me, I hope there is no Frenchman here, as France did in the Second World War, you know, at the height of the Japanese aggression, they had more than 4 million Japanese soldiers occupying China. If Japan forced China to surrender, Japan would be able to reallocate all their soldiers from the China theater to fight against the Americans in the Pacific theater. I think we will be living in a completely different world. And in this sense, allow me to mention, after Pearl Harbor, the Philippines was subjugated to Japanese occupation for about 4 years. So in that sense, the Chinese people and the Filipino people, we should be allies together because we suffer the same scourge and we fought against the same fascist regime in Tokyo. Now, in the world of today, you also hear lots of people talk about destined for war, implying that between China and the United States, these two countries are destined for war. And that theory, the Thucydides trap theory, was proposed by one very eminent professor from Harvard. Fortunately, it's not from Yale. Otherwise, I probably would not say what I'm going to say. He said, based on his analysis of cases of war, he came up with a theory of Thucydides trap, implying China and the United States are destined to fight a war against each other. Now, I felt uncomfortable with his theory from the very beginning, not because he was from Harvard, I went to Yale. I thought something must be wrong in his theory. And now, standing here in Manila, in front of all the distinguished excellencies, let me tell you, I now call that theory, destined for war theory, applied to China and the United States, as a fantasy. Why? Why do I call it as a fantasy? Because he analyzed all the cases of war, which were conventional wars, and he wanted to apply his theory to China and the United States, two very important conventional powers, of course, but also two very important nuclear weapon countries. I remember what I learned from a year of PhD program. Between nuclear power states, you'll never fight a war. Because if you fight a war, you will have MAD, mutually assured destruction. So anyone trying to instigate a war between China and the United States may force mankind to stare into Armageddon right away. That leads me to my theory. Allow me to share with you. I call it inevitability of peace between China and the United States. Now, whether the United States like China or not, that's another thing. But China and the United States eventually will need to live in peace. Whatever problems they have, they need to resolve them in peace, in negotiation, in diplomacy. That's why, if you have not watched the Victory Day parade in Beijing on September the 3rd, one of the weapons China demonstrated is a missile with all the warheads. We call it 61 because it can contain 60 nuclear warheads plus one hydrogen bomb. Now, in the world of today, let me tell you, which country has hydrogen bomb? China is the only country with hydrogen bomb. And that ICBM can cover every corner of the world in less than 20 minutes. and destroy any target in any corner of the world without any possibility of being intercepted. I hope Washington has learned the lesson. They know, as I declared in my interview with Abrams of the United States, very distinguished American, I basically told him, if you want to have war, you will get war. If you want to destroy China, you will be destroyed. If you want to impose nuclear war on China, you will be wiped out by nuclear war. This is very serious. China's policy is very clear. China will not fire the first shot, but China will not allow you to fire the second shot. That's why, while I'm pained to see the confrontation between China and the Philippines in the South China Sea, I also feel blessed that they are only using water cannons against each other. Make no mistake, China has more lethal things than water cannons. But I hope we will only use water cannon, and we will not escalate, and we will never use real ammunition between China and the Philippines. Now, Mr. Abrams also challenged me, saying that China's military buildup is a challenge, a threat to our neighboring countries. I told him point blank, no country in China's neighborhood is a match against China in terms of military power. China's military buildup is a matchup against only one country, that is the United States. China will never allow the United States to launch a war against China, conventional or nuclear, without suffering devastating consequences. Now, I mention this with one purpose. I hope people in China and people here in the Philippines will look at ourselves and each other as friends, rather than as enemies. I don't believe there is any one single enemy in China against the Philippines. We all love Philippines. Everyone I know wants to come to Philippines as a tourist, for example, to taste your beautiful cuisine. And there are so many things of great interest, great attraction to the Philippines. And if the Philippines is really committed to treating development as the hard truth, to build up your connectivity, financial connectivity, technological connectivity, and also AI connectivity of all kinds, let me tell you, China is the best country for you to work with, because China has the largest financial pool, China has the largest manufacturing capabilities, and China can really work with the Philippines completely as equal. We will not look down upon the Philippines. We will look at the Filipino people individually, as a nation, as a country, completely as equals. We will never hold a gun at anyone in the Philippines. That is the reality. Now, the United States is great in many other senses, of course, but do you really think the United States will come to the Philippines with money and with manufacturing contribution? They are really depleting their own manufacturing capabilities. Their shipbuilding is really a shadow of what it used to be. And they are now working with the Republic of Korea to make up for the deficiencies in the United States for their manufacturing deficiencies. Allow me also to mention, because whenever I come to the Philippines, many people in the Philippines talk about arbitration. I am an arbitrator in the arbitration tribunal. It's called Asian International Arbitration Tribunal, headquartered in Singapore. The story is too long. I do not want to go into details to avoid all of them. But allow me just to make one point. Arbitration without consent is a violation of the rule of law. I say this as an alumni from the Yale Law School. I say this as an attorney at law, licensed in the state of New York. I also say this as a Chinese national. I can bring you to court whether you agree it or not. But I will never be able to drag you into arbitration without your consent. Because arbitration without consent is a violation of rule of law. So no one in the world should expect and indulge in the fantasy that you can drag one country, not a small country, not an inconsequential country. It's a big country. It's one of the countries which made the biggest contribution to defeating fascism in 1945 into arbitration without its consent. Come on, you don't want to do that. You do not want to violate the basic tenet of the rule of law. So, I hope you will walk away from today's meeting believing, as I have always believed, arbitration without consent is a violation of the rule of law. We want to have rule of law, but we don't want to have arbitration without consent. And that is also a very important thing. I also want to mention one thing which you may consider that as controversial, because I mentioned that President Taft, the first governor of the United States in the Philippines, and I kept reading the Spanish-American Treaty of 1898. Now, if you go to that treaty, in English as well as in Spanish, there is one very explicit clause saying the territory of the Philippines to be transferred by the Empire of Spain to the United States of America on the west side of the territory should not go beyond 118° longitude. That means that treaty, which is the birthright of the Philippines in the modern time, had its western border clearly defined, carved in stone in that Spanish-American Treaty of 1898. So I hope no one in the world should be pretending that they cannot read the Spanish-American Treaty of 1898. I read it many times, partially because I knew Governor Taft was very much involved in coming up with all the rules and the regulations for the Philippines after the takeover of the Philippines by the United States from Spain in 1898. So I think when we really talk about the realities in the world, we need to go back into history. And as far as the Philippines is concerned, we, from the Chinese perspective, I do not need to go all the way into antiquity, into 1,000 years ago, 5,000 years ago. No, we just need to go back to 1898. We just need to look at the fateful thing which happened in 1898 when Spain transferred the totality of the territory of the Philippines to the United States of America. And soon afterwards, Mr. Taft became the first governor of the United States of America in the Philippines. Now, I mention all this with only one purpose. That is, for me, Philippines is and will always be a friendly country for my motherland, and I will always urge for friendship between China and the Philippines. When we look at the title of our meeting today, Continuing Peace and Continuing Security, I thought one word was missing. That is sustainable development. Because we need peace and security for their own purposes, but without peace and security, we cannot develop. So I think between China and the Philippines, we need peace, we need security, we need to have the legitimate border boundary of the Philippines protected legally, and we want to have sustainable development for the Philippines. I really dream that the Philippines will achieve as much development as China has been making since 1978, when Deng Xiaoping became the paramount leader of China. I'm writing a biography entitled Interpreting Deng Xiaoping. So next time, if you really want to understand what Deng Xiaoping was, what his implications are today, I'll be very happy to share with you. But one thing is for sure, without peace, neither China nor the Philippines can develop. And without development, the Chinese people will be unhappy, and the people here in the Philippines will not be happy, especially when you look at your neighboring country being on the fast track, being developing by leaps and bounds. It is time for the Philippines to really wake up and treat development as your hard truth, as we in China treated development as our hard truth ever since 1978. I thank you for your patience. Long live the Philippines.
Thank you so much, Professor Victor Gao. 非常感谢赵世凯教授。
Well, Professor Gao mentioned about AI. Well, it's not American intelligence. Maybe we can call it Asian intelligence. After listening from that very comprehensive discourse of Professor Gao, it's about time to listen also to one of our speakers. He was former chief of the Philippine Army. He was former chief of staff of the Armed Forces of the Philippines. And when he retired, he became member of the cabinet as the head of the presidential management staff of former President Arroyo. And then he became the national security advisor of former President Rodrigo Roa Duterte. He visited China several times during the time of President Duterte. And let's welcome retired General Hermogenes Esteban.
下一位演讲嘉宾是前菲律宾军部部长、前菲律宾武装部队参谋长、前阿罗约总统内阁成员，他是总统管理办公室的部长，他也是前菲律宾国家安全顾问，以及现任的菲律宾信用银行董事长，请大家热烈欢迎 General Hermogenes Esteban Jr.
I am now the next speaker to Mr. Victor Gao, who did it in 40 minutes. I hope to do it in 39 minutes. No, but perhaps 15 minutes. Promise. Distinguished colleagues, members of the diplomatic corps, led by Ambassador Francis Chua, my good friend, fellow speakers and panelists, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I am honored to speak before the 14th Manila Forum for Philippine-China Relations. And I'd like to extend my sincerest thanks to Attorney Raul Marino for the invitation from the Association for Philippine-China Understanding. By the way, I have some slides for our presentation of your back. I was hoping that it would be here, but I hope from time to time you will look at my slides in the two screens on my left. As someone who has served both as a general and as the National Security Advisor of the Philippines, I welcome this opportunity to share some hard-earned lessons on maintaining peace and stability in the region. Today, I speak to you not from a singular perspective, but from a confluence of experience in military operations, in government policy, and in navigating sensitive diplomatic waters. And I will center my remarks around three interrelated themes: internal strength and resilience, practicing assertive restraint, and cultivating a culture of security. Let me begin with the foundation: internal strength and resilience. A nation cannot project peace outwardly if it is struggling internally. This was a core tenet of our national security policy during my tenure as National Security Advisor. We prioritized the dismantling of domestic terrorist networks and launched the National Task Force to End the Local Communist Armed Conflict, where I was the Vice Chairman to President Duterte. It wasn't just a military campaign. It was a whole-of-nation effort. We engaged local governments, civil society, and the private sector to address the root causes of unrest and foster lasting stability. True national security begins with internal cohesion. Only when a nation is unified from within can it effectively project credibility and engage in meaningful diplomacy. The current national security policy and strategy underscore the critical nexus between security and economic development, recognizing that the two are not only interdependent, but also mutually reinforcing. In today's complex environment, internal cohesion cannot be achieved through military strength alone. It requires inclusive growth, resilient institutions, and equitable access to opportunities. By aligning security objectives with economic initiatives, the policy and aim to foster stability from within, reduce vulnerabilities to external threats, and build a more unified and resilient society. This integrated approach reflects a broader understanding that sustainable peace is rooted in the well-being and empowerment of our people. It is the foundation of internal strength and national resilience. Internal strength empowers us to uphold sovereignty without escalating conflict. And this leads me to the second key point: the practice of assertive restraint, which is a strategic posture that balances firm resolve with measured diplomacy. The West Philippine Sea has long been a flashpoint, and as the former head of the National Task Force for the West Philippine Sea, I have personally dealt with the presence of foreign maritime militia vessels, frequently swarming Pag-asa Island and Ayungin Shoal. In each instance, our response was measured yet resolute. We filed diplomatic protests, we mobilized regional partnerships, and we maintained operational readiness without succumbing to provocation. The principle of assertive restraint calls for standing firm in defense of our rights, including the landmark 2016 arbitral ruling and the provisions of United Nations Law of the Sea, or UNCLOS, while resisting the impulse to escalate tensions. It is a strategy rooted in legal legitimacy, moral ascendancy, and strategic discipline, demonstrating that resolve and restraint can coexist in the pursuit of regional peace and stability. As an example, our pursuit of maritime and border cooperation with Indonesia and Malaysia exemplifies how trust-based collaboration can yield tangible security gains. By jointly securing our shared maritime borders, we not only deter transnational threats such as piracy, smuggling, and terrorism, but also reinforce mutual confidence and operational synergy among our forces. These initiatives reflect the power of collaborative frameworks rooted in trust, transparency, and shared responsibility, which are the key pillars of a stable and resilient Indo-Pacific. Today, we are building a community of like-minded nations, united by a shared commitment to peace, stability, mutual respect, and the rule of law. As the respected former speaker, Mr. Gao, would say, the rule of law. Through strengthened partnerships and enhanced defense cooperation, we aim to build collective capabilities that not only safeguard our sovereignty, but also serve as a credible deterrent against unwanted aggression. Yet, even as we strengthen our collective defense posture, we remain guided by the principle of assertive restraint. A deliberate and disciplined approach that balances firmness with responsibility. It reflects our commitment to uphold international law, avoid unnecessary escalation, and pursue peaceful resolution of disputes. In doing so, we demonstrate that strength and stability are best achieved not through provocation, but through principled action and unwavering resolve or assertive restraint. However, a credible defense posture with diplomacy is not enough. We must also foster what I call a culture of security. Security should not live solely in the realm, in the domain of generals and or diplomats. It must be embedded in the fabric of our societies. When we launch our internal security campaigns, we involve the youth, media, academia, and the religious institutions. They were not just bystanders. They were not bystanders. They were stakeholders. Building on this, the current national security policy and strategy are being rolled out not only to align government programs with our national interests, but also to cultivate a deeper societal awareness that national security is not merely the responsibility of the state. It is a shared mindset essential to peace and development. By embedding national security consciousness into everyday governance, and civic life, we aim to foster a culture of vigilance, resilience, and proactive engagement. This holistic approach ensures that every sector contributes to a stable and secure environment where development can thrive. The security mindset anchored on mutual respect must now be embraced across the Indo-Pacific, serving as a cornerstone for building a peaceful, prosperous, resilient, and inclusive region. As nations confront shared challenges, from territorial disputes to transnational threats, the adoption of a common strategic outlook rooted in vigilance, cooperation, common good, and responsible statecraft becomes essential. By fostering a culture of security, it is viewed that this culture is not only a defense imperative, but also as a development enabler. We can collectively shape them an Indo-Pacific where stability and progress can go hand in hand. Let us not forget, for example, that ASEAN, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, despite its limitations, has played a crucial role in preventing major conflicts through consensus and dialogue. However, as security challenges in the region grow more complex, ASEAN's emphasis on socio-cultural and economic integration has left a noticeable gap in its security architecture. Strengthening ASEAN's culture of security is essential, not only to safeguard and sustain the economic gains that it has achieved, but also to ensure that it remains a credible and effective contributor to peace and stability in the Indo-Pacific. To conclude, peace and stability in the Indo-Pacific will not be achieved by one nation or one strategy alone. We must strengthen our nations from within to allow it to act with principled and assertive restraint. Above all, we must nurture a collective security culture, one that is inclusive, adaptive, respectful, and forward-looking. Only through shared commitment and strategic cooperation can we shape a region defined not by rivalry, but by resilience, cooperation, and lasting peace. Let us ensure that integrated diplomacy is not merely a reaction, but a posture of readiness. Let us demonstrate that strength and peace are not opposing forces, but enduring partners in shaping a secure and prosperous future. And let us remember that diplomacy without a credible military strength is an invitation to assertiveness by opposing forces. This brings me to the instruments of national power as shown. I am sure that most of you here are familiar with these instruments of national power. These are diplomatic or diplomacy, as embodied by Ambassador Tigla and Ambassador Juan. Informational, again embodied by Ambassador Tigla as a former spokesperson. Military, we are here, many of us are here. I just saw the former Defense Secretary, General Kasama. Welcome back. We have the economic instrument of national power. We all know that.
Ay, si Sir
Mr. Gao knows a lot about the economy. We have legal and law enforcement. We have many of our police officers here and from the judiciary. You know that. Just on time, partner.
Inasa rin kayo kapatid.
We have intelligence, which must be differentiated from information. Intelligence is one of the coordinating elements of national power, as they all are. Finance is an instrument that we must not forget. The stronger the peso is, the better we are in auditing projects and budgets, the better we are. And development. Mr. Gao, this is your line. Development. Development. A big instrument of national power. If we cannot develop, we can never be powerful. Remember that. Development. I hope I will be given another time to discuss this in detail, but for now, in closing, I can only say that the nation's strength lies in the strategic integration of its instruments of national power. When aligned with purpose and principle, they become the foundation of national resilience and global influence, and can meaningfully contribute to peace and stability in the Asia-Pacific region. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Maraming salamat. Mabuhay. Appreciate it.
Armejeres Esperon. General.
Thank you so much, General Esperon.
Thank you, secretaries, for the wonderful presentation of what would ensure peace and security in the Asia-Pacific region, and also with the speech of Professor Gao. Sustainable development is very essential. Before we continue with the forum, let's have a short coffee break, and we are going to ask our ushers to bring up the chairs there, and we are going to call the other reactors together with our two keynote speakers to come on the stage. And let's have about 10 minutes coffee and tea break. So relax for a few minutes. And I will take this opportunity to again acknowledge the arrival and presence of former Defense Secretary Delphine Lorenzana, my mentor in golf.
Ay, mentor sa golf.
Well, he was former military attaché of
Classmate pa na
Philippines
sa
in the
golf.
United States. And then when he retired from the Armed Forces of the Philippines, he opted to join the cabinet of former President Rodrigo Duterte as Defense Secretary. And then he became chairman of the Basis of Personalidad Authority under the President Administration before he decided to get out of government service and just like me, play golf if there's a chance. So let's have a short coffee break, a tea break. Enjoy yourselves.
好，现在我们将进行茶歇，欢迎大家在外面享用茶、咖啡，还有几个小点心。
Kita tadi begini. Dati, pero kita tadi begini. Pero matitino mga hindi yan. Tsaka si Sir Del Pindaras. Kahit nga babae si Glory, hindi nakapola naman. Wala masyadong corruption sa people.
Asawa na po. Problema yung asawa.
Ano pangalan na si Glory?
Asawa niya. Si Mike na raw yun.
Yun, no? Si
Yun ang may issue naman.
Oo.
Siya nasira. Anong po si Mike?
Ano mo yun?
Sabihin mo kay mami, hindi na ako. Hindi pa tayo napusada na.
Pwedeng kayo nakikita.
Troy ang tuloy ito. Troy ang